Ben Portnoy, great state of South Carolina, formerly of Mississippi, formerly of the South Carolina Gamecocks, covers now with the Sports Business Journal. You can find him on X and over the SBJ as well. Ben, welcome in, sir. How are you?
What's going on, Jake? Appreciate you having me, man.
Man, I appreciate you. Hey, man, congratulations on the move over to Sports Business Journal. How's that been for you so far?
Definitely good. There's always a challenge going from one school to every school, and Lord knows there's enough going on in college sports to keep me busy. So it's been a fun transition so far, and definitely enjoying it. But certainly a crazy time at the very least.
Let me get your thoughts on a couple things going on out there. One, and of course, I know you guys hit every angle with the Sports Business Journal. A lot of people read Sports Business Journal. Everything going on at Capitol Hill gathering this week with Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, this push for this Project D1. A lot of people saying, hey, this could be where the rubber meets the road, the NCAA, as far as what we know now versus what could be coming, with maybe the split of the, quote, Big Two. We're talking SEC, Big Ten. Looking into a crystal ball, just 10,000-foot flyover. I mean, I don't know that this Project Division 1, everybody coming under this one subdivision, this feels like where this could push the SEC and Big Ten out to do their own thing. At least that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of layers to it. I mean, look, for one, I think that Charlie Baker at the NCAA, the new president, probably deserves some credit for, frankly, looking to accomplish something. And I think that's probably more than his predecessor, Mark Everett, can say for a long time, or
Sure.
at least, being out forefront and trying to get out in front of this. Now, there's that. That said, I think that, the reality is the divide between these conferences has kind of already happened, and we're seeing it with the money spent and the divide in terms of revenue from media rights deals and things like that. Now, whether this is the thing that sort of pushes everything over the edge, I think there's certainly that. And I think that when you talk to, a group of 5 ADs and commissioners and things like that, that is absolutely a concern they have, right? Are you making it so that no one has access to the college football playoff? Are you saying that only the Power 5 schools do? Is it only the 30 teams or 50 teams that break off into major college football have access to that? I think that's the biggest question that we all have. But that said, again, I think this is probably another step towards that. But I think that the reality is that because of the growing divide in finances at all of these schools, and even within the Power 5, not just between the Group of 5 and everyone else, that I think is where you see where it feels like this divide is coming sooner than later.
Ben Portnoy on your radio. Make sure to find him on X, also Sports Business Journal, Wednesday edition of the program. Not 100% agree, and it's so many layers to this thing. We'll see where that goes. Hey, your thoughts on, I know you guys did, I believe, a piece on, the 4-team playoff era has ended. Now we head to the 12-team playoff. This is fun because, for me, at least when you look at it, I mean, Ole Miss, and you know this, I mean, look, expectations in this state have already hit, Deftone type levels already, and we've got months before we even get to the kickoff. Tennessee feels like they got a shot. You look at Texas, Alabama, Georgia, they feel like they all got a shot. You go to the Big Ten, several teams there. Everybody, at least, half of these conferences feel like they got a shot, which kind of makes, to me, at least makes the sport even more interesting as we head into that 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I think that, that's the reality, is that I think that this year I think was a good example of this, right? You had a year where there was a lot of parity in the sport. You had a lot of teams that were kind of toward the top of the sport, had chances to make the 4-team playoff. It was a pretty wide open race. You didn't have the dominant team like we've had in past years. And I think that, yes, it was a 4-team playoff, obviously, this year, but I think it's a good precursor to what we're going to see in the 12-team era, in that you're going to have a lot more fan bases and a lot more programs invested in what's going on late in the season. Now, does that dilute the bowl system and all of that? Certainly, there are probably longer standing ramifications on other levels that happen outside of the 12-team playoff. But I do think that, kind of like I said, you're going to see more teams and more fans invested and all of that. And I think that, generally speaking, is a good thing for the state of the sport, to have more teams that feel like they've got a shot.
When you look at what happened, how surprised were you when Nick Saban announced he had retired or was retiring? And then, talking about being the guy behind the guy for Kalen DeBoer, that's a heck of a job.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story in that, I was sitting in Phoenix with a couple of my media friend folks at the NCAA convention, and we were sitting in one of the media rooms, and all of a sudden, Chris Lowe's report from ESPN's report comes that Nick Saban is retiring, and we all kind of look up and everyone's like, what? And, a few words that I'm probably not allowed to say on
Sure.
air were said for sure. And everyone kind of scrambled and thought, oh man, here we go. And, I will certainly remember that for the rest of my life. But I think that, definitely surprising. I think, look, like that was something that had been thrown out a lot, that there was thoughts that maybe Saban was nearing the end. But I think that, frankly, we've had this conversation for 5 years, right? Like, when is Nick Saban going to retire? When is that going to happen? And obviously it happened this year. But I think this year was a little bit different. You felt like even in just the tone, I think, hindsight's 20/20, but I think just looking at, the way Saban was this year and the way he interacted with folks, whatever, the way he was in interviews, things like that, like it felt a little bit different. And I think that, in hindsight, that makes it seem like, oh yeah, of course we all knew this. How many people actually knew this? I don't know. But to get to the second part of your question, I think, when you look at Kalen DeBoer and what he's done, I mean, it's such an interesting spot because, we've all played this game for however many years of who's going to be the guy to replace Saban. And, if you're talking 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, like how many Alabama fans would have told you either A, who Kalen DeBoer was, or B, that he was going to be the guy to replace Saban? I think is an interesting dynamic on a lot of levels. But I think it's an unenviable position. But I think you also look at it, and Alabama had, basically had their list, right? Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian, Mike Norvell, and Kalen DeBoer were kind of the guys that, you felt like were probably in the mix. Obviously, it kind of went on down the list, and you ended up with DeBoer. And I think that, look, like the guy who's coming off going to a national championship game and getting Washington into a national championship game 2 years after inheriting a complete dumpster fire, like that's not nothing. And I think that it's easy to forget that. And you look at, he's been a head coach for a long time. Like, it's funny. I was having this conversation with a Power 5 athletic director the other day of you look at guys who have won and won recently. And I think, Kalen DeBoer's a good example. I think Lance Leipold's a good example. Like, winning travels. And I think that, there's always the tendency to hire the sort of hotshot offensive coordinator or whoever that is, right? And I think that, when you look at some of these guys, and in the past, they've maybe been passed over for jobs like this, or even at Washington, right? They've been passed over for jobs like that. And the reality is like, there's something to be said for people who either A, don't have to grow into the job and in it being a first head coaching job, or B, have had long runs of success elsewhere and know how to build that. I think certainly the landscape has changed and shifted a lot, and that's, part of it, and that's going to be part of the game. But I do think that, the fact that a guy like Kalen DeBoer has won basically everywhere he's been. I say this as an Indiana grad. Watching what he did in 1 year at Indiana is frankly nothing short of a miracle on a lot of levels. And I think that, certainly there are challenges and different challenges at a place like Alabama, but I think that, of the guys that you could hire, like, you didn't really have a bad option, and I think that Alabama ended up in a good spot, even though it might take some time to getting used to, someone that's not Nick Saban patrolling the sideline.
Make sure to grab him a follow on X at bportnoy15, also at SBJ. That's a Sports Business Journal college sports reporter for SBJ. Ben, I appreciate your time, man. Hey, look, great to catch up with you. And again, congratulations on the Sports Business Journal gig. Fantastic spot. Look, we'll catch up and do it again very soon.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me, Jake. Always fun.